44% of elite track and field athletes use banned performance-enhancing substances, but only 1% get caught.
Can people just kind of literally do whatever they want?
No one should be telling you what you can or cannot do. 25% of elite swimmers claim to be asthmatic, versus only 8% of the wider population. It's like, oh, is there an epidemic of asthma among elite athletes?
Are you at all worried about the lengths that these athletes might go to just win?
Well, I actually think that this will be fundamentally safer. Ultimately, we want our athletes to be safe, and we want to show the boundaries of human performance. You know, there are many problems with the Olympic Games, and they're once every 4 years. The enhanced games will be every year.
You've mentioned being inclusive many times. How are you going to handle transgender athletes?
What stands to be proven is, can a trans woman who has used science to transform her body compete in a level playing field against an enhanced woman? You know, we can debate all day long about the morality of the enhanced games, but one thing that everyone seems to agree on is that people want to watch this.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, whatever you guys are
Everything's
ready.
your fault.
All right. Today's show is going to be about the Steroid Olympics. So
Yay.
I'm really interested to talk to this guy who's starting it up. We'll find out more information. But Nsima and I were just talking, and Andrew, and we're just trying to figure out like why someone would maybe choose this style of Olympics that's going to be untested versus the accolades of the Olympics. I think so much is made of the Olympics, NBC or CBS or whatever company, whatever network is with it for that year. They put so much advertising into it. And, you know, we know Carl Lewis and Michael Phelps, and these people become, you know, American icons. They become legends. And every year it seems like they find a story that's cool. And then the person is on a Wheaties box, and they're part of pop culture America. And it has been like that for a long time. So I'm kind of curious on why someone would maybe want to jump ship and enter this Olympics, which is untested.
Along with that, every single country is behind their athletes. Like, look about like how much nationalism China has for their athletes and America has for their athletes. Every single, you know, country in the world is paying attention to their country in the Olympics. So
I represent the United States. People are so excited about that.
Right. But, you know, one thing that seeing on this guy's website, it's like, apparently a lot of those athletes probably don't get paid that much. I wonder, because, you know, Phelps probably got paid a ton, same with any top athlete. But the athletes that are like third string but still manage to make it to the Olympics, are they getting paid well? Right. You know what I mean? And how long are they getting paid? So with something like this, maybe they're able to just put more money back in?
I'm not sure exactly what the rules are, but the United States seems to have a stick up their ass about the whole thing for some particular reason, because many, many years there was it was like amateur athletes only that were in the Olympics.
What?
So I think for many years it was amateur only athletes in the Olympics. There wasn't, I'm trying to remember correctly, but it wasn't professionals. And that's why there was the college basketball players. And that's why the Dream Team came along, is because USA was kind of like, fuck this, because our amateur guys are starting to get beat. And then they, you know, formed the Dream Team, and these guys that have millions of dollars have, you know, a lot of advantages along with obviously just being fucking great at their sport. But I was kind of always under the impression that it was like sponsored and it was like minimally paid for, and I thought that that was kind of part of the whole thing. But I guess it's not that way in other countries. Like other countries, for their weightlifters or for whatever figure skating, whatever sport it may be, they set aside a lot of money for that, and those people are living pretty well. And I don't think that they should be living a shitty lifestyle, but I kind of thought that was the spirit of the Olympics, was that it wasn't professionally paid athlete. That's all they did, was these particular sports.
Looks like we're ready to go. So let's join their Zoom link.
This has been like a dream of yours, hasn't it?
The all-steroid Olympics. It's well, it's, you know, it's untested. Right? It's an untested organization. But we'll find out from him, because I'm sorry, I can't recall his first name. I forget.
Aron, right?
Aron.
Yeah, Aron D'Souza. There we go.
Yeah. We'll ask Aron directly and get to the bottom of some of this, try to figure out, you know, what the makings and origin of this whole thing is. But I believe they want to have like doctors assisting the athletes if they want to use some performance enhancement.
How are they going to stop these guys from using Tren?
Yeah, maybe they're not.
Why would they want to?
Maybe they're going to promote it. So how did this come to be? This untested. That's basically what we're looking at, right? An untested version of the Olympics.
Well, I've been studying the Olympic Games and its dysfunction for over 30 years. It's something that's fascinated me since I was a young child. And I learned recently that 44% of elite track and field athletes use banned performance-enhancing substances, but only 1% get caught. So it's so commonplace, and not just in elite sport, but through wider society, that I said it's time to return honesty to sport. All right, let's do this honestly, openly, and transparently under safe clinical and scientific supervision.
Yeah, I love this because it can get to be tricky. Years ago in swimming, they banned the particular swimsuits that the athletes had because it provided some buoyancy. Now, it did provide buoyancy for anyone that wore it, but not everybody wore it, and some people broke some records. And then some people got kind of upset that the outfit or whatever it was that they were wearing was very expensive. And so expense and price becomes another part of the equation. One country might have more money than the other, might have more access to better training conditions. I mean, so how do you kind of, is there any sort of line here? Can people just kind of literally do whatever they want, or there's still some sort of governing rules to try to make sure that everyone's playing under similar rules? Because I think that is a big part of sport, right? Is that we are in agreement. This is the match that we're going to have. And so we're both in agreement on this. And then if he does something wrong or I do something wrong, it's considered kind of out of bounds, right? It's out of the boundaries of the rules. So is there particular rules to this at all, or is it just kind of Wild West?
No, there's absolutely a lot of rules. Unfortunately, we can't have a complete free-for-all. So number one, the overarching guiding principle of what we're trying to achieve is that individuals with free and informed consent, and that includes athletes, should be able to make choices about their own body, right? No one should be telling you what you should do with your body or what you can or cannot do. And so that idea of bodily sovereignty and freedom is very core to what we want to achieve. But also, we don't want to have someone to have a heart attack running the 100 meters. And so our athletes will be the most monitored elite athletes in history. They'll get MRIs, CT scans, all of the kind of diagnostic support so that we can pre-diagnose if there's any risk for, in particular, cardiac incidents, so that they're well aware of that before competing and ideally would not compete.
Yeah, I think that's great because you don't want it to be reckless. Are there going to be a list of drugs that maybe the athlete has to divulge to say like, hey, here's what I'm on, and that way maybe the athlete could be advised like, hey, I don't think you should take that combination, or this is kind of risky?
Well, that's really a choice between an athlete and their doctor. And fundamentally, I believe that athletes, like all human beings, have a right to medical privacy. You should not have to disclose what you are using. But likewise, we want to create an environment where individuals feel empowered to discuss these things openly. And we will be hosting, in particular, scientific symposiums before the Enhanced Games so that the world's best scientists and clinicians can openly discuss the performance therapy regimes that have the best ability to support human flourishing. Because one of the core problems right now in the performance medicine space is that the World Anti-Doping Authority, which is the International Olympic Committee's enforcement arm, funds so many scientists to produce research that is against performance medicine. And so we want to encourage scientists to likewise feel very free to openly and honestly discuss the risk and the benefits of different performance therapy regimes.
I'm really curious. I know we're leaning on the danger side of things, but within, I guess, the fitness industry, the closest thing that you kind of have to thinking about something like this is what you see in NPC bodybuilding. Because NPC bodybuilding, there is literally no testing, and these athletes are able to use whatever they want to use. No, they don't have many of them don't have doctor guidance, but they usually have the guidance of a coach. And a lot of these athletes will do whatever they can to put on as much muscle as possible. So, there's different elements within the enhanced Olympics. I saw on your website, there's strength, combat, gymnastics, and swim. And one of the things that interests me the most, I guess, is strength, because these are the athletes that are going to take they're building strength, but they're also going to be attempting to build a lot of muscle to propel that strength. And that may require a use of, I guess, maybe potentially more intense anabolics. So I wonder, I know that Olympic athletes have been asked, if you could win a gold versus die, I guess the question was die young and win a gold versus live a long time or whatever. Many of those athletes pick die young and win a gold. Now, if you're just using whatever you want to use, that's one thing that makes me wonder, if there's athlete privacy, are you at all worried about the lengths that these athletes might go to just win?
Well, I actually think that this will be fundamentally safer because right now, if you're an athlete on Team USA, you can't go to your doctor. You can't go to your teammates to discuss what performance therapy regime you would use, right? You cannot get good information. And so by taking this all out of the darkness and shining a light upon it and creating the environment where athletes can have the opportunity to discuss this with the world's finest scientists and clinicians, then we can make it for a much, much safer environment than what presently exists today. Because, as I pointed out, 44% of elite track and field athletes admit, they admit to using banned performance enhancing substances. And virtually none of them, I would say, are doing that under appropriate clinical supervision. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, bringing everything into light makes things much safer.
I kind of have a follow-up question to that, because this is super interesting and dope. But one thing that we see in the fitness industry side of things, again, is a lot of influencers have started to be open about using steroids and using performance-enhancing drugs. And many of these influencers are like, okay, guys, I've been lifting for 2 years, time to hop on some test or whatever. And they're 22 years old. But after we started seeing that, then we started seeing this younger generation of teenagers, because of the influencers that they follow. Now you got 16-year-old kids finding a way to source test, and they're hopping on because they see other people hopping on. Now, of course, every person can make their choice, and people always give the advice of, lift for a long time before you make this decision. But is there any aspect of this are you worried that maybe it may encourage use of PEDs amongst younger athletes to try to catch up to the level of adult athletes?
Yeah, and the way I would analogize that is to look at Hollywood, right? So you could make the same analogy about Botox, for example. Mm-hmm. And you'd say, Kim Kardashian and all these influencers, they're affecting young girls, right? And teenagers probably want Botox. But what is the safeguard there is clinical supervision. Right? You might be a 13-year-old and say, Mommy, I want Botox because Kim Kardashian uses it. And then your mom might say, okay, let's go talk to your doctor. And your doctor's going to say, not in a million years. You're actually going to ruin your skin, right? It's a terrible idea. Yeah. And that's the same thing about young athletes using performance enhancements. And I'm not a clinical physician, so I won't give any medical advice here, but I can pretty much tell you that when you're a teenager, using any kind of hormonal enhancement regime is probably going to be actually net negative for you. And that can be prevented by good clinical supervision.
What about the teenagers that might compete? Because in swimming, there's very young athletes, and in jiu-jitsu, we're seeing a lot of young athletes. So in some of these sports, you may have someone that's 15, 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, no, for the time being, particularly in our discussions with our insurers, there will be no one under the age of 18 who will be allowed to compete at the enhanced games.
So I do like the analogy of Hollywood and stuff, because, right, like you go to a doctor and no doctor's going to approve a teenager to get on Botox, but you don't need a doctor to get your hands on PEDs. So I'm curious, with your athletes, I know you said that like they have all the privacy in the world that they need, but are you going to maybe, I don't know if this is the right word, but force them to at least work with a doctor, like in order to make sure that they are maintaining their health and they're getting the screenings and stuff? Are they going to be recommended somebody that's going to overlook their, I guess, their protocols?
That's right. And absolutely, we will not allow any athlete to compete who does not have clinical supervision. So ultimately, athletes will have to have a nominated doctor who oversees them for an extended period of time. So it's not just about going to, Dr. Nick from The Simpsons and he'll just sign off on any protocol, right? You have to have a doctor for whom has supervised you for extended periods of time. And then you would also have to be subject to health screenings that ensure that you don't have an enlarged heart, you're not at risk of other cardiac risks. Because ultimately, we want our athletes to be safe, and we want to show the boundaries of human performance. There's so much that we can do through the benefit of science, and it's not just about breaking world records. Imagine a 50-year-old breaking the 10-second 100-meter. What would that show us about our capabilities as a species?
I want you guys to imagine that you're wearing a cast on your hand and you're going through your whole day with this cast hand. Well, because your fingers don't move, your hand will start to become stiff, weak, and that'll work its way up your arm. That's the same thing that happens when you wear these damn shoes, okay? I'm sorry to curse, but it's frustrating because these shoes that have a narrow toe box, although they look nice and they're Nikes, narrow toe box so your toes can't move. They're not flat, so your foot is in this weird thing and it's not getting stronger. And they're not flexible, so they don't move and your foot just moves like this all day, which means your feet are getting weaker. That's why we partner with Vivo Barefoot Shoes. They have a bunch of shoes for the gym and casual shoes, but the thing about these shoes is that they are wide, they are flat, and they are flexible. So your foot can do what it needs to do and it can get stronger over time. That's going to allow you to be a better, stronger athlete. Andrew, how can they get them?
Yes, that's over at vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. When you guys get there, you'll see a code across the top. Make sure you use that code for 15% off your entire order. Again, vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Throw these away.
Oh my God. Dude, watch the camera.
What do you think would pull some of the athletes into wanting to compete in this particular Olympic Games when the current Olympic Games that we have has like a lot of prestige, and maybe some of that is deceitful in some way, or maybe it's corrupt in some ways. And I think we're going to find out very quickly that even if your organization does last for a long time, that these records most likely were probably broken with that in our current Olympic Games. These records were probably broken with enhanced athletes that were getting past these drug tests and such. But with the prestige of the Olympic Games, why do you think an athlete would maybe jeopardize their career and go into the Olympic Games that you have? Because some of my understanding that they can't kind of cross lines of going into non-drug tested organizations. I'm not sure if I have that correct, but I believe that's like WADA's current stance on things, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's entirely possible for athletes, and again, I'm not going to give specific legal advice, it will depend on the federation here, to step out of the WADA code. It's often said as taking a summer holiday. And so there are many problems with the Olympic Games. Number one, they're once every 4 years. The enhanced games will be every year. And so that gives an athlete an opportunity to build up their fan base, to engage with the audience on a much more regular basis in an era where we have shortened attention spans. Number two is that, winning an Olympic gold medal is not a route to financial success. Rivers of gold flow into the Olympics. It's the third most watched sports event in the world. $8 billion in television revenue comes in, and not a cent of that goes to the athletes. Billions is wasted by the sports federations, by the International Olympic Committee on needless bureaucracy and the building of dozens of stadiums that get thrown away after 2 weeks. And so we are going to be much more infrastructurally and bureaucratically efficient. And ultimately, we're going to pay our athletes because excellence deserves to be rewarded. And so, fundamentally, it will be a financial decision for some athletes to work in a environment that is supportive of science, is future oriented, and has a compelling business model that supports athletes in their quest for success. And I think just creating financial stability for athletes will actually mean that world records get broken, because the majority of people who are, say, competing in track and field aren't actually doing that on a full-time basis. They are struggling financially to pay for their supplements, their equipment, their travel, their coaching. And it's just pathetic that these fat cats in Lausanne, Switzerland, are traveling around in private jets and living in palaces when the athletes of the world are earning nothing.
So what, like, I don't know if you're actually able to disclose, but how does, in this situation, how will more money get into the athlete's pocket? Is it just a higher percentage of the revenue that's made and from everything will be able to go to them? Or how are you guys going to be doing that?
So we're working through that with our athletes commission right now, and the exact financial structure. But fundamentally, if you're have medal potential, you will get paid a fixed salary, plus there will be significant prize money, particularly for breaking world records. And so there will be a much more compelling financial structure. And in countries like the UK, medalists don't earn anything. And I look at the comparison against something like Wimbledon or other Grand Slam tennis events, pro golf, where you see athletes making millions of dollars a year at the very top. But if they're in the number 20, 30, 40, 50 seed at Wimbledon, they're still making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And that's enough to sustain their training and their coaching regimes. And that doesn't exist for Olympic athletes because there's so much waste and inefficiency in the Olympic system.
I'm kind of curious, the athlete's mindset of like going from the regular Olympics into this Olympic Games, and maybe just thinking that if their name is out there and they're in this untested organization, that they're going to maybe just be listed as like a cheater when they go back to, if they want to try to go back to the regular Olympic Games. What do you think of something like that? Do you think people will come under that kind of scrutiny?
I think it's an act of bravery. And I always analogize coming out as an enhanced athlete as something, very analogous to the LGBT movement. It takes a step of courage to be among the first to say, I'm going to embrace science. I'm going to take a step forward. I'm going to take a stance against the corruption and the dysfunction of the Olympic world. And athletes are, might not, if you're number one sprinter in the world, you might not do it, right? Honestly, you'll have big endorsements, a chest full of gold medals. But you know what? If you're the number 5 sprinter in the world, no one cares about you at the moment. But you might see this as an opportunity to build a new fan base, to have a new kind of engagement, to break out in new and in different ways. And this is the story of disruption over and over again in different industries, right? Think about the first taxi drivers who broke away to drive Uber, right? People would say, you're crazy. Who's going to use a phone to call up a taxi? You just stand there on the side of the street and get it, right? But the world changes very quickly, yet the world of sports doesn't respond very well to social, political, or technical change. Just look at the kerfuffle about trans athletes.
You had mentioned, big prize money, and then also if athletes are at that level, that they will get like a certain set, almost like a salary. Where is the funding coming from? Because I'm just thinking, the Olympics being on, the big networks, people are dropping millions of dollars on those commercials and that ad space for that. Where's the money coming in for these Olympics?
So the enhanced games are funded privately, and so we can raise debt and equity, particularly from venture capitalists, to start building up the project. I'm pleased to say that we have some of the world's leading venture capital funds that have thrown term sheets at us, and we're just in negotiations with them at the moment. But also, the world's leading television networks and sponsors have already started to engage with us. And so, we can debate all day long about the morality and the opportunity of the enhanced games. But one thing that everyone seems to agree on is that people want to watch this, right? A lot of people disagree with this project, but every single one of them that I've spoken to and I've debated with over the last 4 weeks since we launched, they say that they want to watch it. They want to see what the human body is truly capable of when science is unleashed. And what does that mean? Television dollars. And so, we've had great offers from the networks and from the streamers, and we're just working through that at the moment. But it's clear that this is a compelling piece of television that will captivate the world's attention, because you just imagine it, right? Live on Fox or Netflix one day, we're going to break the 100-meter world record, right? We're going to say this is the first time that science is unleashed.
It's not really getting broken, though.
Right.
Well, is it getting broken or is it not getting broken? Right. We can have this debate, but if you look at Ben Johnson in 1988 and basically every subsequent Olympics since, there is this question about whether athletes who were competing then were using banned substances and not disclosing it. And if we just do it all out in the open, we will see that, we can get a better, fairer, more transparent and truthful result. And it might be a man on the moon kind of moment. What do we break the 9-second 100-meter?
I don't know if you've ever seen the film Bigger, Stronger, Faster. Have you ever seen that before? Documentary?
I have not, no.
Well, that was a movie where I had my moment of bravery. I was one of the first people to openly talk about using performance-enhancing drugs, especially in a film. And to me, I've always been a fan of performance-enhancing drugs. I never really understood the hiccup or the, not the hiccup necessarily, but the morals behind it, of it being cheating in particular sports. Obviously, if a sport is going to test for it, I kind of understand. These people are all in agreement. These people that play this particular sport are all in agreement that they're not supposed to take this. And now they're kind of taking it under the table. But what performance-enhancing drugs do for you is undeniable. And the feeling that you get from them, the recovery, the assistance that it gives you, it kind of makes me think, shit, military, firefighters, police officers, I would actually want those guys with a little bit of boost.
Maybe not certain police officers.
A little bit of pep in their step. Yeah, maybe not even trends. Yeah. But, I think it's undeniable that these things do enhance you. They're undeniable that it not only enhances you, but helps to make you feel better. You start to think about some of the sports that are out there, like baseball or something like hockey, which is super physical. There's a shitload of games. Those guys are huge. They're smashing the crap out of each other. And, for those guys to have a little bit of something in their system, especially during the season, would probably be a net benefit to them from a health perspective rather than it causing more damage.
Well, and this is what I like to say. We are all enhanced. I got laser eye surgery. Should that disqualify me from competing in the Olympics? Because that might be cheating in, a field like shooting, right? We drink coffee. Most people drink coffee almost every day, and that's actually a banned substance under the WADA code if you reach a certain level of caffeine intake. And a lot of people use alcohol or recreational drugs as a way of enhancing leisure experiences. And so we should be very open to the possibility of medicine, not just to treat disease, but how can medicine and science and technology make us better human beings, make us more capable members of our society, make us more capable athletes? And that's a real step change in how we view medicine. The medical establishment is so much about treating negative chronic conditions, not about making us better. And I think one of the outcomes of the enhanced games will be the possibility of unleashing a sort of Cambrian explosion of medical innovation. Because if millions of people watch us break the 100-meter world record, you know what the first thing they're going to do is say, mate, I want to go to my doctor. I want to get whatever that guy was on. And more people will use performance enhancements for different reasons under clinical supervision again, which will create a market where billions of dollars will be spent, where research and development can be extended so that we can have higher quality products and better, newer compounds that will make us fundamentally better, that can be done under FDA regulation, scientific excellence, and clinical supervision.
I'm just picturing in my head right now, I don't know why it didn't occur to me earlier, but I'm thinking about the females that are going to compete in these games. They might look like some of those German swim teams from back in the day.
Well, there are sports that enhanced women might have a particular advantage in. Right. When we think about enhancements, we generally think about anabolic steroids, but the breadth of enhancements is so much wider than that. And so if you think about a sport, let's say like gymnastics, like rhythmic gymnastics, that doesn't really require huge amounts of muscle mass. It requires a great amount of flexibility and athleticism and creativity too. And the enhancement regimes that are most likely to improve those sports are not the ones that will generate large amounts of muscle mass, or that tend towards the what men are most interested in. So if you actually look at the television kind of viewership, women who watch the Olympics by and large are interested in sports like gymnastics and figure skating that have a much more artistic and athletic element to it, rather than just merely being strength oriented.
And that actually brings up something interesting, because I remember it was maybe last year that Sha'Carri Richardson got she set a record, I think, in the 100-meter, but they found weed in her system. And I think that race for her was totally banned, and she was banned for, I think, a few months, or if it was up to a year. So that makes me wonder, something like, I'm guessing you guys with psilocybin or marijuana, if athletes want to use this and it's something that improves their performance, there's going to be no issues there either.
Yeah, and people talk about performance enhancements as this broad category that's kind of universally agreed and a bright line, right? There's some things that are performance enhancements and some things that are not. But like creatine, which I'm sure we all have used at some point in our life, was a banned substance at one point. And now is, you can buy it in a GNC. One thing that I always point to is that 20% of the goods in a typical GNC store will get you banned under the WADA code. And then, things like marijuana, right? Marijuana was once, viewed as absolutely unacceptable in the sports world. Now it's perfectly legal and is being removed from the WADA code.
Oh, it is?
And in process, I believe. Okay. And then the next thing, what I would always point to is a therapeutic use exemption, the TUE. So 25% of elite swimmers claim to be asthmatic versus only 8% of the wider population. It's like, is there an epidemic of asthma among elite athletes? Of course not.
I got sprint-induced asthma.
They're extending the definition of what is asthmatic so that they can get access to these high-power inhalable steroids that increase their lung capacity. And there's a huge abuse of the TUE process. And so what I'm trying to say here is that what is a performance enhancement is not an objective test. It's a subjective test. And at the core of the WADA code is this question, is the use of this therapy against the spirit of sports? And that is purely a subjective test. It's not about athlete safety. It is not about fair competition. It's about whether or not they feel that a particular substance can or cannot be included.
TRT, it's a popular topic. A lot of guys are hopping on it. It's something that we've talked about a lot. And you might think you're a candidate, but how would you know if you haven't got your blood work done and you don't know where your markers are? That's why we've partnered with Merrick Health, owned by Derek from More Plates, More Dates. And the cool thing about Merrick is you'll get your blood work done, and you'll also have a patient care coordinator that can help you analyze your blood work, analyze your testosterone, all these other markers to help you actually figure out if you're someone who needs TRT, because there could be things that you could be doing nutritionally, with supplements, or even with your lifestyle that can boost your testosterone to the levels that they should actually be at. Andrew, how can they get their hands on it?
Yes, that's over at merrickhealth.com/powerproject. And at checkout, enter promo code POWERPROJECT to save 10% off the Power Project panel, the checkup panel, or any individual lab that you select. Again, that's at merrickhealth.com/powerproject. Promo code POWERPROJECT at checkout. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
How are these athletes going to be selected? Is there some sort of like pre-trial thing or something like that? Or how do they get in?
That's a great question. And so our objective is to be very open and inclusive in our selection mechanisms. And so we don't want to create layers of bureaucracy like the National Olympic Committees and the sports federations that then required all these salaried officials and, who waste tons of money. Our aim is to be a lot more like Ironman Triathlon, right? A kind of highly participatory organization that anyone who has a $500 bike or a $5,000 bike can compete in, and that you can just show up and give it a go, right? And everyone can be part of the Enhance family, and that anyone could just show up to a qualifying event and give it a go. And, we're looking at some interesting sports that, historically were included in the Olympics but are no longer, such as tug of war or rope climbing,
Nice.
right, where there isn't established federations or even competition leagues. And I look at something like tug of war because it's just so interesting for enhanced athletes to do.
The CrossFit Open, I always thought was really interesting how they do that. It's an online, like 5-week or 6-week. Every week you are assigned a particular workout, and then people go and they do their workout. It's the largest competition in the history of mankind. It has like 200,000 participants or something every year. And people then get their test scores evaluated against other people. And beyond that, it gets tested against other people, but you can select an age category. You can select your state. You can select your country, your state, or where you are locally. So you can actually see like, oh, where does my clean and jerk compare to people that are, between 40 and 50 years old in, a particular region. You can be like, oh, I'm first in that. It's kind of cool, but I'm 75th in the state and I'm 125th in the United States or something like that. It's really interesting. So I wonder if, you guys would be able to almost employ something like that. And what CrossFit did, which was interesting, is that in order to like qualify, or in order to get these tests done, you just need a qualified person watching you. And then people thought that everyone was going to cheat, and everyone kind of does cheat, but you can only cheat so much because eventually you got to show up and compete against other people. Pretty interesting.
That's a really good idea. And what I see is that according to our research and also external peer-reviewed research, is that about 13.5% of men between the ages of 18 and 35 have tried anabolic steroids at some point in their life. Right? Then anabolics, I generally put at the more extreme end of performance enhancements. And there's a very large audience, as you well know, running a popular podcast like this, for performance enhancement. There's a great interest in it. 75% of men who regularly go to the gym are interested in using performance enhancements. So there is a huge market of people here who are trying to find, the broad church to be a part of, the movement to be a part of, and they feel excluded by the traditional sports federations. They feel marginalized by the traditional sports federations. So whatever we can do to be open and to be inclusive of everyone who wants to get involved is very important to us. And one thing I will note is that we are accepting of natural athletes too, right? So I hope, a natural athlete will come to the first Enhanced Games and say, you know what, I'm going to beat all you guys, right? I'm going to beat all you guys at the 100 meter, and I'm going to break the world record. It'll make for great television. It'll be really dramatic. Let's see if it can happen.
But then no one's going to believe them. They're just going to be like, no, look where you are. You're not getting tested.
Yeah.
But so
they could actually voluntarily comply with the WADA code, right? They could go urinate in a cup and say, hey, I passed a WADA test.
Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned being inclusive many times. How are you going to handle transgender athletes?
So that's a great question, and one that I get frequently. Let me be specific in my wording here. So the traditional view is that a trans woman who went through puberty as a man has an insurmountable biological advantage over a cis natural-born woman.
Mm-hmm.
That may be true, and I think that's generally accepted as correct. However, what stands to be proven is, can a trans woman who has used science to transform her body compete in a level playing field against an enhanced woman? Because let's remember that trans people can use an immense amount of hormones in their transition process in a way that a natural born individual cannot. And so we are very open to the idea of trans athletes competing in their gender identification and category, because it creates a completely different paradigm when everyone is allowed to use science. And what I would like to point to is that I think there's actually, a philosophical connection between, let's say, bodybuilders who use science to transform their body into their idealized form, and trans people who use actually very similar pharmacological compounds to transform their bodies into their idealized forms. And we really are open to scientific, social, and technological change, and this is really just the vanguard. In 15 or 20 years' time, we'll be talking about CRISPR babies, right? Children who are genetically engineered by their parents from the time of inception, wanting to compete at the Olympic Games, right? We're going to have AI, right? Imagine like an Elon Musk Neuralink implant, right? Will that person be considered cheating? But we are very open to these social and scientific changes, and if we are not, we're going to end up like the Olympics and on the way to the scrap heap of history, because we can't respond to the changes that are happening in our society.
This seems like something where, I don't know if it was on Black Mirror or whatever, but like the cybernetics aspect of it, like straight up who knows in 30 years if somebody's able to like change up their legs. And if this is the games that they choose to go to, this is the games that I guess you'd be able to do something like that if there's a category.
Yeah, and actually, so since we launched, actually, we've gotten as much interest about cybernetic enhancements as we have had for pharmacological enhancements. And so, for example, there are easy cybernetic enhancements. So imagine swimmers who can use earphones and their coaches can talk to them as they're swimming, right? That's a cybernetic enhancement. Or there are swimming goggles now that have LED displays in them so that they could get real-time decision support as they're swimming. Imagine a javelin thrower wearing Apple Vision Pro goggles getting real-time AI decision support. And that's just the outset. We've had professors of robotics from leading universities come to us and say, "Oh, Aaron, can I build a robot that competes against human beings?" I said,
Oh, man.
that would be really interesting, right? Wouldn't that be a great piece of television, right? And I'm saying not a car, but like a bipedal robot who can jump out of the starting blocks, run the 100-meter, and see if that can compete against a human. Because if we look at our history, 1998, Garry Kasparov getting defeated in chess by IBM's Deep Blue. It's a seminal moment in history, and it would be great to see engineers build robots that run as fast as humans. But that's easy. Think about the high jump. Think about gymnastics, like the pommel horse. Can we build something of that capability that can outclass the best of our species? And really, I think that this is the future of sport, right? It's this interaction between man and machine and science and technology. This will never happen at the Olympic Games.
No.
Has anyone from like the Olympic Games or Olympic Committee, have you heard any kind of blowback, or has anyone tried to censor you guys?
Yeah.
I mean, are they getting kind of like, they're probably like, "Oh, this is dumb. This will never take off." But you're actually going through with this, and you have a website, and it looks like you're really establishing yourself. And do you have a date yet for when it's going to start?
So we look to going to the Paris Olympics in August of 2024 as the official opposition party to help support athletes who are being accused of doping, and support those who want to come out as enhanced and be open and honest. And then going into our first games, which will likely be an exhibition event where we try and break track and field world records in December of 2024.
Wow.
But, I know for a fact that the International Olympic Committee has discussed this. They have certainly issued statements condemning us, but that gives us more hope, right? Because we know that they're afraid and that they're stuck in the past and they don't know how to change for the modern world.
Well, look at the progress of MMA. 30 years ago, people thought fighting in a cage was disgusting. They thought it was repulsive. They didn't want to see people smash and punch each other in a cage. They thought it was too barbaric. And Dana White and the UFC did an amazing job. And now I think a lot of people prefer watching UFC over a lot of the traditional team sports they used to. UFC hasn't completely taken over that market. But there's a lot of people like myself who I've always loved watching football growing up. If football's on and there's a good UFC match on, I would watch the UFC. And so I think
and the evidence is that UFC has really taken over from boxing.
Yeah,
I believe it's valued at about $30 billion now.
Right.
It's an extraordinary business.
It's owned by Disney
UFC
now.
It's owned by Endeavor.
Yeah, right.
It's a listed company, and it's being spun out now with WWE into a listed company called TKO. And they've built an extraordinary business. And not even 30 years ago, 20 years ago, we were saying, oh my God, like that's, it was actually illegal cage fighting in many states. And they pushed the boundaries and it created a much more exciting and engaging format than traditional boxing. And we looked at doing the same. The reality is, you've got three smart guys behind the mics there. Can you name the best track and field athlete in the world, the best swimmer, the best gymnast?
Well, I just know Noah Lyles right now, but that's because it popped up on my feed this morning.
I got nobody.
And it's unfortunate, right? These are the finest specimens of our species, yet are largely unknown. They get 15 minutes of fame every 4 years. They make virtually no money, and it's not because of any lack of excitement in the sport or any lack of talent. It's because of the bureaucratic structure which they operate in. And I think we can create a much better model. Another example I'll point to is that Usain Bolt is arguably the greatest sprinter of all time. Maybe you can't even argue about that. And his total lifetime earning capacity was only $12 million US.
What?
And we know that because he got defrauded by his financial advisor, and it was subject of a court case. And so the finest example of our species, Usain Bolt, is worth less than a thoroughbred racehorse, right? It's really unfortunate that's even the case. And we really believe that excellence deserves to be rewarded. And by paying athletes a fair wage and creating a new format that's more engaging for television and social media audiences, we believe we can create the dominant international sporting event. The old Olympics will be gone. Who's going to want to watch the old, slow Olympics when you can watch the fast, modern, enhanced games?
Picture if Usain Bolt came and was like, fuck it. I'm going to hop on some stuff, get my recovery back, and
see what I can do.
See what I can do.
Yeah.
That'd be wild.
I'm just thinking of all the older athletes that are like, okay, cool, I can start taking stuff, and then now I'm going to go compete again. Like, that's going to be incredible.
That's really interesting. There was a jiu-jitsu competition earlier this year. I think it was in January. There's this athlete, his name's Cyborg. He got popped for having testosterone in his system. And then he made a post on Instagram saying, we put because I think he's maybe like 38, 39. And he mentioned we put our bodies through all of this stress, training, et cetera, fighting. And I get banned for having testosterone in my system because I want to be able to compete for a longer period of time. It's like a lot of the athletes that I guess choose to go this route will potentially have better longevity because they'll be able to use things that can aid with any type of injury that they get that's typically banned. They're not going to be losing muscle over time. They're going to be able to recover faster and better. You're going to have a lot of older athletes within this that are doing really well.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be inspirational to older viewers who are going to say, and like I didn't know this until I began this process. I'm 38 years old, and I thought, my elite sports career is behind me. I was a pretty good bike rider. I played rugby. But now I'm talking to people who are competing at the highest level of sport with some performance enhancements behind them in their late 30s, in their 40s, even pushing their 50s. And obviously I don't know about Robert F. Kennedy's performance therapy regime, but mate, I look at the videos of him and I'm like, you have some great DNA, some great Kennedy DNA behind you. Plus, I'm sure you're embracing the miracle of science in one way or another.
Yeah, he has mentioned that he does TRT. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's impressive, right? And don't we want to be stronger, faster, younger for longer? Like, why should the International Olympic Committee force governments around the world to fund anti-doping authorities who are the anti-science police, right? Who are preventing scientific progress. They are preventing us from having performance medicine regimes that actively support anti-aging and a better quality of life. And I think once we get past this element intellectually, it's going to spur a revolution in science and medicine. And what I would point to is that the Olympics have been cut off this way once before, which is for the first 100 years or so, they were obsessed about amateurism, right? You could not be paid $1 to compete in sport. If you did, that was something unethical. It was cheating. And if you were a professional athlete, that was somehow corrupting the integrity of sport. And if you look at the language they used to describe people like Jim Thorpe in the 1930s, who was caught out for being a professional athlete and excoriated for that, it's very, very similar language. It's a very similar approach as they use today against enhanced athletes.
So you have a hot date coming up and you look in your closet and all you see are the old ugly clothes that you usually wear and you're going to wear tonight. It's time to end that, guys. That's why we've partnered with Vuori Clothing, because they have some amazing athleisure clothes that you can wear in the gym when working out, but also clothes that you can wear on a date or during Hanukkah or whatever. You can wear these clothes wherever and they feel amazing. Some of our favorites are the Ponter Performance line, which has dream knit fabric, which literally feels so soft on your skin. But they also have this is the Rise tee, also soft, also feels nice and fits great. And they have a lot of amazing clothes that you need to check out to step your fashion game up. We're trying to help you out. Andrew, where can they get it?
Absolutely. You guys got to head over to vuori.com/power project. That's VUORI.com/power project, and you'll automatically receive 20% off your order. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I think this is incredible. Before we hopped on the call here, Nsima, he asked me, he's like, this is like a dream come true for you. I was like, in a way, it kind of is. I do think, people are always going to find a way around the rules. And sometimes it makes sense to just have a lot less rules and to maybe have some regulations in place, make sure people are safe. You can only ensure safety so much, but I think a lot of people that do sports, a lot of people that are playing sports at a high level understand the risks. And I wouldn't put it past anybody, any of the great athletes, any of the greatest athletes of all time. They're so competitive. I wouldn't put it past them that they utilize performance-enhancing drugs. I wouldn't be surprised. But I do think a lot of people would be. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that guy cheated. I can't believe he chose that route. But they chose that route because these things actually work. They're effective.
Science is real. It's as simple as that. And by doing everything out in the open, we can ensure that the diffusion of knowledge and data that will allow for the creation of better and better compounds, and it will make our species fundamentally better. And I could not be more excited about bringing your dream into reality. And the reality is that millions of people have talked about this, right? At pubs and at bars, watching the Olympic Games, saying, why do we have this lie? We should just let everyone use performance enhancements out in the open.
Is that how this got started? Is that a little how this got started? Do you get in conversation with a friend and say, man, it's just stupid. I don't know why they're not doing it. And then one of you is like, well, shit, I'll hop on that grenade.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I actually, about 20 years ago or 15 years ago, when I was an undergraduate at Oxford University, I read a paper by Professor Julian Savulescu, who's a world-leading bioethicist. He's one of the top guys in bioethics in the world. And he wrote this very smart kind of 8-page long paper about why we should have an enhanced Olympics. And that just sat in my mind for a long time. And then, like yourself, I may have watched one of your videos where influencers and bodybuilders and athletes, particularly on YouTube, were openly talking about using performance enhancements. And I thought, oh, the moment is here, right? The moment is here where a community can be brought together of individuals who believe in the potential of science, right? And who are open and honest about it. And I was in Miami over Christmas, working out at Equinox. And I thought to myself, mate, everyone here is enhanced. I just said to myself, you know what, I'm going to start this. So I sat down at my desk and I wrote out a business plan. I sat down with some prominent venture capitalists that evening, and they were like, we'd back this. And then the real step change was the next day. I had just breakfast with a friend of mine, Brett Fraser, who's a 3-time Olympian. And I said, would you, in your prime, have competed in enhanced games if you could be more open and honest about the use of science, plus get better financial remuneration? He was like, absolutely. And I can find a dozen friends who want to do so also. And Brett joined us as our chief athletes officer. And that's where the journey began.
Has anyone who's gotten busted come to you and said, hey, I want to be part of this, or I want to be a spokesman for this? Or
Yeah. Really famous people who you would very much know, who set world records and have had a chest full of gold medals taken away from them, who hate the International Olympic Committee. And there are also a great number of athletes who have, not been convicted under the WADA code, but were accused, and they know how hard it is. Because when you get accused of using PEDs at the Olympics, the first thing that happens is you lose all of your sponsors, you lose the support of your sports federation and your National Olympic Committee, and you're left out on your own. And then you're like, oh shit, I've got to fight this. I need lawyers who charge $1,000 an hour. And I've got this massive uphill battle where, the IOC is judge, jury, and executioner. And it's an unfair system. And, any athletes who's ever gone through that process, trying to defend their name, knows how difficult it is. And they've been extremely supportive of what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. And I can't wait maybe 3 months from now to see you on Joe Rogan to pump this thing up even bigger. So congratulations on getting this thing started.
Thank you so much. I'll just say if your listeners are interested, just go to our website, enhanced.org, register there. We'd love to, get you guys, anyone involved in this movement, because yes, it's not just our team here in London putting this together. It's everyone who's a supporter around the world, and the more people we can have involved in this, the better.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Dope.
Yo, it's gonna be wild. It's gonna be wild.
Guy seems sharp. He's got a lot of good answers.
Extremely. It's again, I think it's just gonna be so cool for like the athletes who are in their 30s and 40s, because that doesn't necessarily, your prime doesn't have to be when you're 30. There are a lot of things you can do to prolong it, as we've seen. So you're gonna have like early 40s athletes doing some wild shit.
I think there's a lot of people that just missed out on opportunities too, just because of timing. The Olympics happening only every 4 years, and with the gymnastics girl, this past
Simone
Biles, I think she was on some medication that she's been utilizing for a long time. She has maybe like an anxiety medication or something like that. And where she was in China, it wasn't allowed, or wherever they were for the Olympic Games, it wasn't allowed. So she had to, not take it. And then she had not performed as well. And then I think like the next day she like pulled out of a competition, and everyone was like actually really mad at her, which is interesting because she's a gold medalist, and I think someone that represents our country really well. And I mean, she seems like an amazing athlete, an amazing person. And it just kind of sucks that she had to kind of undergo that scrutiny. And maybe with an organization like this, maybe that won't be a factor. Maybe you can take I wonder how many other athletes that's happened to, where they legitimately need a prescription for a particular thing and they weren't able to do it, or they just kind of just weren't. Like, imagine if you're, 24, being 24 versus being 28. So if you're in line to make the Olympics at 24 and you just have the slightest little thing mess up, you tweak a hamstring or something like that, and now you're out, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to try again when I'm 28. But with those extra miles on you and trying to adhere to the rules, it might be hard for you to make it at 28.
Yeah, I just hope that it can be like the UFC is legit now. Early on, even though we all loved it, it wasn't quote legit because they wanted to see, for lack of better terms, a freak show, right? They wanted to see Bob Sapp against somebody else.
They allowed a soccer kick and all that, where
Right.
someone's on all fours and
So-
blast them in the face.
I'm hoping that it's not like NFL versus XFL. Like early on, right? That was exciting, but then after you watched a game or two, you're like, oh, this is just not as good. So hopefully, because I'm excited for it, because I think we've all kind of said like, let's open up the floodgates. I think we've said that multiple times on this podcast. It's like, well, now maybe we can open the floodgates responsibly and let everybody see exactly what, with pharmacology and good genetics and the timing, right? Having it once a year, what all that coming into one, perfect scenario, what that looks like.
It is going to be interesting because already within the Olympics, there's like certain areas, certain countries just have less funding. Those athletes, they have less ability to use facilities, train with good trainers. So with something like this, where there's pharmacology involved, there are going to be certain athletes who have potential less access to certain pharmacology that the Russians are having just a free flow to, So who knows, man?
Yeah, I do think it would be wise for them to maybe select some sports that don't have comparisons. For example, like strongman might be a good idea, because it's not in the Olympics currently. Good luck breaking those track and field records. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, it's not. Just because you're enhanced doesn't mean it's going to happen. These world records they're fucking crazy, and so many of them have been done under the influence of performance-enhancing drugs. People got around. I don't think all of them have been. So out of the 100, 200, 400, and 800 meter, I would say that probably at least half of those are, with the current records that we have in place, probably half of those are enhanced with something that WADA doesn't approve of. But it's really hard to say. Like, I'm totally making up a number just because the numbers are astounding. But also in knowing, like, Ben Johnson ran like a 9.78 and Usain Bolt ran a 9.69. I mean, how does somebody run how does somebody run, it could be genetic, could be hard work, could be training, could be the shoes, could be the track. I mean, there's a combination of a lot of things. Sports do advance. It does seem like there's some people in line to maybe potentially break Usain Bolt's record even. And that's not to say that they're on performance-enhancing drugs, but I do think we're going to find out quickly that so many of these things have been set by people on performance-enhancing drugs, because there really hasn't been anything new under the sun in terms of training. The training's been similar. People want to make a big deal about food and nutrition, but it's kind of been similar. Like, people have kind of known what to do for a long time. So I don't know.
It is pretty crazy, though, how far ahead Bolt is right now versus like even the current track and field runners. Because on my feed popped up Noah Lyles. He ran a 200 meter today, and I think it was like, Andrew, could you Google Noah Lyles 200 meter? I think it was like maybe 19.49 or something today, or 19.52. It was really good, but Bolt's world record was 19.19.
Wow.
Like, he's still so far ahead the best guys today that it's just like,
He also looks different.
he's long as hell.
Yeah.
Every single stride he takes is just wild, So it's not just being enhanced that's going to allow somebody to be able to break that. It's like how your morphology, all these other things are going to come into play.
So he, let's see, London's 200 meter in 19.47 seconds.
19.47 Noah Lyles, yeah.
Usain Bolt is one of the few guys, it happens kind of in everybody almost, but he's one of the few guys where you really see this like bow in his spine, because he's running so fast, because he's like just propelling himself so far forward so quickly. He's slamming his foot down so hard into the ground and shoving his foot back so hard that his whole spine does this. It like undulates as he's running. And you don't even really ever see that or notice that with anybody else, but it's because the arms and the legs are almost like pulling the whole spine apart. And it's, a lot of people like accuse him of not having good form because of that. They're like, he like overarches when he runs. It's like, well, it seems like it was working pretty good. And he just smokes everybody too. Like, he kind of starts out like, I wouldn't say slow, but in accordance to the other athletes, he looks slower,
Mhm.
and then he just kind of stands up and just like runs right past him like he's a different species altogether. It's unbelievable.
The MMA side of this is going to be really cool. Like, imagine like a guy that's imagine a Francis Ngannou who's just like, oh, I'm gonna hop on.
Well, yeah, Cowboy Cerrone. I don't know if you guys seen he posted, or sorry, maybe somebody just quoted him because they were asking him about like retired life, and he's just like, oh man, TRT is amazing. You know, he's like, now that I'm not fighting, I got on TRT, and then he mentioned like if you get on TRT, like you gotta. I forgot how he worded it, but basically he said you're gonna feel like you're a teenager again, so get your wife ready because you know it's gonna be on. But someone like him, maybe. Shit, who knows if he gets a huge bag from the enhanced games?
Yeah.
It's like shit, dude. I would love to watch Cowboy Cerrone fight on TRT. Holy shit, would that be amazing?
I don't think Brock Lesnar has
Lesnar?
ever won. Yeah, Brock Lesnar has ever won a gold medal, so maybe he'll come back out and hop in there too.
Him and Ngannou.
Yeah,
Just
right?
all fucking juiced.
Nganou's a solid 262.
But who's not
Nothing.
watching that though?
Nah, everybody. Dude.
Everybody's watching
This
that.
is going to be wild.
Golly.
Y'all should just go follow enhanced.org or go find that website, check it out. I don't know if it has an Instagram page because Aaron has his own page, but this will be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
It reminds me of Physical 100. Sorry, but you remember Physical 100?
Yeah.
Remember how you mentioned
Yeah,
the
yeah.
tug of war? Like, it kind of reminds me of that. You know what I mean? Like, just all these, because the Physical 100 that they had all these like influencers from Korea that did a lot of different sports, Olympic athletes, had an Olympic wrestler, all these people came in and now they're doing this. This is like that, but literally on steroids.
I think it's fucking cool that he wants to turn it into like a party sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like almost like just invite everybody.
Oh, fuck yeah, I'm going out to the first one. I'm going to find a way.
He should have a home run derby too.
What's a home run derby?
Just when you hit home runs.
Yeah, okay.
It'll just be all the MLB players.
Barry Bonds, blue belt, comes out of retirement.
Yeah. Well, so many athletes deny it still though. Like, so Ben Johnson, you think Ben Johnson would be a great like spokesman for this, but he always said that he never took anything. So you're like, I don't know.
Man.
He said he took something, but he said he didn't take what they said he took, which is even weirder.
That is weird.
Yeah, it's strange. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.
This podcast probably got you excited about getting enhanced. So check out this video because you don't want to take tren. It's pretty dangerous, very effective, but very dangerous. That's why we made this video. So check it out. Click it. You'll enjoy it. A lot of tren history, tren bologna sandwiches. Click it.